Surprise? Yes, it's a surprise review. This was totally unexpected. Some of you know, a couple weeks ago, I was involved in a minor accident. I was just waiting at a light to turn left, and the going straight section went green, and the guy behind me thought that meant we were also green, and he just hit me at about 5-10 miles an hour. Messed up the rear bumper on the 328i, and that's getting repaired. And so I guess because I drive an older BMW, they decided to give me this as a loaner for a couple days. So not upset about that. I love driving cars I've never driven before, and while this isn't necessarily the car I'd personally buy, I gotta be honest with you, I'm a little surprised by how poorly the reviews are for this car, and compared to the 328i, how good of a time I've been having with this car. So let me give you a quick walk around the car so you can get a feel for little nuances. So this is the jet black paint. Finally, standard LED headlights, so things I've been enjoying. Being able to see at night. Yeah, my old halogen lights, not so good. What else? Standard, shouldn't even say standard, I believe it's an option. It's an option to get the sunroof on this car. Oh, how about these mirrors? Look familiar? Yes. Same ones they put on the Supra, down to the 3 lines on the side. Which, by the way, I got the Supra wrapped this past week, and this was a point of contention for the installers. So as you can tell by these very new tires, this car has about 1,000 miles on it. Not necessarily my favorite tires, so I guess this is where I should tell you a little bit about the car. So this is a 228 X-Drive. Yeah, X-Drive. So it's an all-wheel drive vehicle. This is a 4-cylinder turbo engine. I believe this is the middle output B48 engine. 228 horsepower, about 250 torque. Funny enough, those are the exact same type of figures you get on an A3 and GTI. So that seems to be the magic number for cars this size. And while the front is definitely pure BMW, the side profile screams Acura and maybe Civic. It's not what you would call your traditional BMW shape, including the back. So they call this a Grand Coupe. But it actually kind of reminds me a little bit of the X6, right? Little baby X6. So you would think, hey, lots of storage, right? No, not so much. Not so much. So that is something I will say. This car is smaller than my 328i. I believe because of the all-wheel drive equipment in the back, this is actually raised up compared to my car. I mean, I guess just the packaging in general is totally different for a front-wheel drive car compared to a rear-wheel drive car. But I was surprised. This is pretty low. This is pretty high, and it doesn't make for a very spacious interior here. Let's see, what else? Disc brakes all around. Always a good thing on a premium car. The rear, not huge. So you guys know I'm not a tall man, and that is not a lot of room left for somebody to sit behind me. So kids approved, adults probably not. So here's the front side. Great seats, honestly. Again, a good surprise. These seats 1,000 times better than what I have in my 328i. There is no bolster. This feels like real leather. These are downright like sporty seats. If I had this in a sports car, I would not be upset. And to have it in something like a base car like this is pretty cool. I'll get a little bit more into the interior, but here's a quick snapshot of what that looks like. Now let's take a quick look under the hood or bonnet. And there she is. Wow, what a totally different packaging than we're used to seeing underneath a BMW, right? It's tight, it is small, and it is facing the wrong direction. Yeah, so, you know, obviously in a front-wheel drive based car, the engine and transmission are facing this way rather than this way. That being said, it's a characterful engine. You know, it's definitely, I wouldn't be upset with having this type of engine in a daily driver. It's not obviously an ultimate driving machine any longer, but who are we kidding ourselves, right? Like, soon enough, engines will be a thing of the past, and it'll all be electric motors, which really don't have as much character anyways, so might as well get used to it, guys. So I've noticed not too many review videos show cars and their lights at night. It's all about the daytime, but there's definitely something to be said for seeing the interior of a car at night. So here's the interior. This is a pretty base interior for this model. You can see some of the ambient lighting, blue. I think you can change it on this color. But take a look so you can get a feel for what the interior of this car looks like at night. Those are actually not even the headlights. That's actually just the daytime running like LEDs. Here's the headlights. So they're pretty strong. As I mentioned, this is the standard car, so no virtual cockpit or customizable dashboard cluster there. 37, almost 38 miles per gallon on my typical drive from my friend's house home this evening. It's a mix of highway and city driving. So that's pretty impressive. So if we're comparing this to my old 2010 328i, so naturally aspirated, very similar horsepower, that's about 10 miles per gallon more. So definitely some progress over the last couple of years. No surprise there. 4-cylinder turbo versus that old 6-cylinder. And I would say the torque here is much higher as well. Between the torque and the newer transmissions, fast shifting transmissions, there's just no comparison on a daily basis. The new engines, while maybe not as refined, not as smooth, not as good sounding, they do provide a better MPG and a better everyday driving, you know, 1,000 RPM to 4,000 RPM driving experience. Cool. Well, I'll continue this review here during the daytime. So here's the interior of the car in daytime. Thought I'd point out some of the things I thought were interesting about this car on the interior. I've always found interiors of cars and videos are grossly misrepresented, so I'm always curious. It's almost like sitting inside the car, right? Like, what does it really feel like to be inside the car? Cool. So first was first, we can take a look down here. Very similar setup to a lot of the more modern, higher end BMWs. Looks like we've got a phone charger section here. Old school USB connector, just one there. There's also one in here, but it looks like it's a USB-C. I'll point out that this is pretty cheap. And this is leather covered, but it also feels pretty cheap. Seats are pretty nice though. In fact, I would say I'm a little jealous that these are the standard seats. I don't think this is an upgraded option. This one does not have the adjustable bolster, but the driver's side does. So the passenger, sorry, you're out of luck. But the driver does get that. This has got the standard inlay. This doesn't feel too cheap. Soft touch. More importantly, I find this to be super responsive. So on the Supra, so I've got a Supra for those that don't know. This is not as bright. This is definitely higher resolution. This is definitely responding much quicker. I mean, you can just see how the CarPlay, that's pretty good. Yeah, usually all this stuff lags. Here it doesn't. Pretty good. This one does not have the automatic gauges. And what I thought was kind of funny is there's actually little needles hidden in there. Originally I thought, oh, those are just digital, but nope, they're in there if you look real careful. So that's really the only display. These are just illuminated to make it look like they're digital, but they're not actually digital. Here's the steering wheel, standard steering wheel, not too thick. Feels pretty good to the hand, heated. So the trim on this car, I believe it just has the one option. It doesn't have the advanced option, the one that's like $4,500. It's really just the $1,600 one, but it does have heated steering wheel. It does have heated seats in the front at least. I think what it's missing is all the advanced technology systems like the adaptive cruise. This one does not have that. Other than that though, it does have the side assist. It does have the emergency braking. It's got obviously reverse camera these days. I think that's required. It does have sensors as well. Let's see if we can get those sensors to show the resolution for the camera is pretty good. Let's see if we can get that going. Put this thing in park, reverse. Yes. So it's pretty good. Definitely better than the one in the Supra. Oh yeah, here's a quick other thing that I thought was pretty neat. If you go to the CarPlay, I guess it disconnected. Oh no, there it goes. Google Maps, full stretch, pretty cool. On the Supra again, it only does like the 3/4 screen. There's another thing here. I wish it would do this. The other big thing is it's really bright, so no issues with the brightness here. I know in the Supra that is an issue. Let's talk about things that I found that were similar to the Supra. It's this door handle. That's the exact same one on the Supra. This section right here, the lights, exact same layout. And the mirror. So this might be the reason why the wind buffeting is an issue on the Supra, because these mirrors maybe were optimized for a 2 Series. Yeah. So not an issue on the 2 Series because, well, you've got the back. And so you can crack windows, you've got the sunroof, so totally different aero package than you would on the Supra. But I have to say, this is definitely a A3 size car, Audi A3, maybe even slightly smaller. So very comfortable in the front for somebody under 6 foot. On the back, I don't think anybody over 5'10" would feel too comfortable over there, especially with the headroom. Here's the sunroof. It's pretty big. It doesn't open all the way, but it is panoramic. It does have this little center section that kind of divides it, but overall not too bad. Adjustment. I wish the Supra had that as well. So this car does actually come with a couple of modes. So you can see here, they make it easy. We've got Sport, Comfort, Eco, Auto H. Took me a while to figure that one out, but it's Auto Hill Hold. So probably not something you use very often. But I think by default, Comfort is like normal mode. Sport, you can see. Here it is, and you can actually set some custom configurations. You can see the type of thing. So steering gets a little heavier. Engine noise, probably the fake noise, but it does have a dual exhaust tip, so maybe there is a valve that opens. And then transmission. I like to set it up in Comfort just because, you know, that way it doesn't try to always find a lower gear. Other interesting notes here. Well, let's go to car. Driving info, and you can see here today I've driven, I think it's 80 miles, 84 miles. There you go. You can actually see it there. 84 miles and 36.5 miles per gallon. I am impressed. Again, this is somewhere where if we're comparing this to my old 328i, we'd be looking at probably 27, 28 miles per gallon. So this thing's doing about 10 miles per gallon in my normal commute, which is pretty impressive considering this car is, I would say, more fun to drive on a daily basis, faster due to the torque and the automatic faster shifting transmission. And there you go, 10 more miles per gallon. So 10 years of development definitely does seem to pay off. So let's go back, put this thing in sport mode, and let's see what this thing does in a straight line. We'll try to torque it here and see how she goes. Again, no speed records here. No speed records to be done here. Here in Mexico, but you know, it's zippy. I will say in sport mode, thought I was a little sensitive, a little too sensitive, to be honest with you, a little jerky. So not something you'd probably be using all that often, unless you reconfigure some of the settings. But yeah, it's a fun little car. Definitely a lot more fun than the 328i. I gotta say, I don't think it's the engine that's a letdown on that car. It's really the transmission. Those old transmissions just don't shift as smoothly, don't shift as fast. They seem to pause in between gears compared to this, where you'd be hard-pressed to see a huge difference in everyday driving compared to, say, a dual clutch or a DSG. So I know the reviews of this car are not stellar. You know, this is a front-wheel drive based BMW. You know, many years ago, that's everything BMW would stand against, right? Ultimate driving machine, rear-wheel drive, inline straight sixes, and this is front-wheel drive based, 4-cylinder turbo car, automatic. But I have to say, compared to my old 328i, which is all those things, this is a better daily driver. Would this make as good of a race car, right? If we were to strip it and modify it, probably not. Probably the limits of this car would be much lower, but with a combination of better gas mileage, good torque for lower RPMs, smooth shifting, decent ride. I will say this car is pretty stiff, considering this is a base model. It's pretty stiff. I'm sure the combination of run flats and all-wheel drive, maybe this is a little bit stiffer than your typical all-wheel drive or base car, but it's definitely not as smooth as you would have expected for a base car. That being said, is it painful? No, it's not. I can happily drive this all day long and not get tired. Is it a Mercedes? Is it an Audi? No, it's not. But I think that's what they were targeting, is the general person that buys this car is looking for something that feels a little sportier. And this feels sportier. I did try to push it on some on and off ramps. Entry understeer, not surprised, but if you push it to the very limit and lift, you'll get a little bit lift oversteer. I tried playing around with the traction control off or in sport mode. I don't think it gets turned off all the way. It won't let the rear step out on the car. But it feels fun. It's a fun, safe car, not going to get you in trouble. And at the end of the day, that's really what the average consumer is looking for. Let's talk price. So as this car is, it's got the base 17s, it's got a base color, it's got a base interior, other than really the all-wheel drive and some of the more basic options in here. The $1,600 package. This car retails for roughly $41,000. So while that is a lot of money, somebody who's looking for this car, you know, first luxury car, you know, this is the cost of entry these days. This is going to compete with an Audi A3. This is going to compete with the Mercedes CLA, right? Those are all front-wheel drive base cars. They started that segment, and BMW is just following them with them. So hard to blame them for that. Yeah. Now, if I wasn't looking for a luxury entry car, what else would I buy for this price point? As a car enthusiast, I'd probably be looking at a GTI, right? Like an Autobahn GTI that's low to mid 30s, 30,000. perhaps even a lower spec Golf R. That's going to have more space than this. It's going to be, again, front wheel drive based engine, all wheel drive, 4-cylinder turbo car. It's going to have more horsepower than this as well. That one's probably, the new generation is going to be in the 300s, right? 310, I think it is in Europe. TBD here in the US, but I'm sure it's going to be very similar. And that car is pretty refined on the interior. Is it as nice as this? I think time will tell. I certainly prefer this type of center console compared to what Volkswagen has done with theirs. All touchscreen here. These are all touchscreen. I like the buttons personally. I like the option of not having to touch the screen and use this knob. I definitely like this type of shift knob better than the one Volkswagen has. But time will tell, right? When I get to review that car, we'll see if the dynamics of that car surpass this. Final thoughts here on the BMW 228i xDrive. I like it. I don't think it's the car for me. I don't think it's the car I could see myself spending 40 grand on. You know, in the used market, could I see myself buying a used one down the road if it's at a good price? Yeah. You know, it's definitely a car that's very smooth yet sporty. Is it the ultimate driving machine of the past? No. But, you know, having driven this back-to-back with a 328i, E90, neither is that, honestly, you know? I think we get stuck on this nostalgia of the past, and then we see our old, you know, our old heroes, and they really don't always stack up to be what they used to be. You know, this isn't an M Performance car. This isn't an M2. Not that the current M2 has anything to do with this car in reality, other than number 2. But, you know, if I had a friend who was interested in this car, I wouldn't say don't buy it. I would say, you know, if this is the type of car you like, it seems like a good option. I personally, I'm more into sporty cars. I would probably go towards the route of the mentioned Golf R, the new one. More power, a little sportier. Hell, it's more functional with the hatch, right? But, you know, for somebody, say like my mom, say like a girlfriend who's not into sporty cars, and they like the badge, and they like the little bit more luxury, and like the idea of driving a BMW, yeah, it's not a terrible option. It's not a terrible option. Are there comparable options out there? There's a ton. There's a ton of cars that are not going to be competing against this. In price range, in specs and size. But, you know, it's definitely not the worst car in the world. Nobody's going to drive this car and say that this is a bad car, that it's got issues, or that it lacks power, or that it doesn't shift right, or it doesn't look amazing. I think it's a very good daily driver. The type of car that you could drive in the city and be easy to park. The car that gets good gas mileage. And a car that, you know, has all the modern technology that people require this day and age. So that's kind of my 2 cents, you know. If you like it, test drive it. It's an option. It's not a bad option. If you don't like it, there's plenty of other options out there for you. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Let's hope I get more surprise reviews like this. I know I've got a buddy that claims he's going to buy a Tesla, so we'll see if he comes through, but I think you guys would enjoy that comparison, compared to something like this, or even compared to the GLI, which, by the way, I do need to do an update on the GLI. It's been almost a year since my family got that car, and so far so good. You know, dead reliable. They put about 6,000 miles. It's due for its first oil change here this weekend, and let's drive that, because it honestly in some ways is a good comparison to this car. That one is got, again, 230 horsepower, 250 torque, 4-cylinder turbo. It's German. It is bigger than this. It's also significantly cheaper than this. It's front wheel drive. This is all wheel drive. Probably a better comparison would have been the front wheel drive version, but you know what? It's still a conversation piece. So until next time, thanks guys.